What a good qualifying session we had in Circuit, the Barcelona Catalonia. It was a great one because George is having his comeback and he had a good qualifying and is able to nick the pole from Lewis Hamilton by half a tenth. That means Lewis Hamilton and George Russell will be starting side by side tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be a good race. Let's start from FP3. The FP3 was funny. Guys trying to pick themselves, playing games. Ferrari probably still learning from the upgrades because it still take them time to get the best out of the upgrades. But I think they're still learning the upgrades, still looking at data, trying to see how to perfect the car to performance. They were able to do a great job today because by qualifying, the car looks fast. They were about 3/10 of the Mercedes or McLaren before, but now by qualifying they were so close. They were few tenths, which makes sense for them. I think looking at it all round, Ferrari had done a good job. I will admit the deficit Ferrari are having on the engine now is the turbo. They are having a smaller turbo, which makes sense for start. It makes sense on race also, but I think the chemistry of it is the airflow mixture will be lower and the ability for the car to keep the thermal efficiency will be so high. They going on a bigger turbo give them an opportunity to push the car to the limit. Every other team have sorted their start issue out with the clutch, which means it's not just the turbo that you can use to sort it out. Clutch is important, so I think Ferrari needs to go down that way. If they had a whole year to understand that and some other teams had few months to sort out with the clutch, the FP3 was quite dicey. We knew the Mercedes are still the benchmark. They have the speed. Ferrari were struggling. McLaren were on top of Mercedes. They were so close, but the two drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, were struggling. They were literally struggling. Max Verstappen was on and off, and this shows the peace in understanding where Red Bull are, because Red Bull seems lost. The FIA said they have the best engine. Red Bull are saying no, that Mercedes still have the best engine. FIA are saying no, Mercedes might have the best ERS. ERS is not part of the engine. That's the energy recovery system. They're like, no, they should not release the old data because they need to check it again. But it's going to be a flustery decongesting of datas when they're talking about engine and we're adding other auxiliaries to it. Because if truly the fourth power unit is a good one, I think thermally there are areas in which they can improve. Normally we know Ford engines are not really reliable. I'm sorry, their super engine are reliable, their normal day engine are not reliable. If they have a strong engine, the best engine on the grid, they need to find a way to make it fast, which I think that's the point they are losing. They are really losing that point. They need to make the engine fast. Also, aerodynamically, Max Verstappen is still struggling with the steering. He has always struggled with, still struggling with some part of the cars, and I think the team needs to find, Red Bull needs to sit down all over again. So going back to qualifying, we can now start seeing Leclerc is a very talented driver, a young, great driver, but his mistakes are always haunting and undaunting. I think he needs to work on that. That gives him more presence and more opportunities to do great things, right? So I think he needs to do that. So in Q1, a lot of hide and seek games. Qualifying, we saw the Perez Bottas coming out. Bottas officially had a brake disc issue in the last practice as FP3, but coming back into the qualifying, I think they had a better one. Perez ahead of Bottas, which they were about close to 2 seconds away from the pack. But going down, we had Stroll out qualifying his teammate for the first time in over 40 races, qualifying Alonso in 22, and Stroll and Alonso were about 3/10 away from the top, which means Cadillac have really improved. They are doing a nice job. They are pushing the boundaries, they're pushing the limit, which makes a bell for them. So I think Cadillac can still do a better job. Hamilton topping the Q1 session with Russell behind him, Leclerc, Antonelli. Hulkenberg has been on fire, did a great job. The two McLarens struggled. They were just struggling, and it looks much more like the McLaren still needs to find a balance, because theirs now is showing that they had a lot of mistakes last year, but other teams, including Mercedes and Red Bull, were not just on point. That was why McLaren was able to win, because if they're having such mishaps, such mistakes, such unclarified errors, I think they need to work on that, because they have a huge bunch of mistakes, heaping it on themselves, and it's affecting the way they race. Now, Q2, we start seeing the Ferrari and the Mercedes battle. Start showing that the Ferrari are in it, trouble the Mercedes. We saw Lindblad out by just a few tenths, and it was because there was a mishap in which he could not qualify into the top 10. Hulkenberg got his place, did a great job. Bortoleto out, Colapinto, Gasly, Bierman, Sainz out in Q2. But Luckily, we saw Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen in that order in Q2. And when you're seeing that, you're already looking at something tasty and feisty, because you can see it's a sandwich of Ferrari between the Mercedes. Antonelli finding pace but not matching his teammate's pace this weekend. His teammate was just miles ahead of him. Probably Mr. Saturday's back to Barcelona, because he's complained about the car not suiting him, and the team said they would look at it, trace it back to see where the car started not suiting him. Probably they can find the mistakes and get back, but I think the car is suiting him now. If the car is not going to suit him in the next race, I think then you should start knowing that Georgie boy is been making a whole lot of excuses, which I think that's what he's been making. Well, let's see how the car pans out or suits him better in subsequent races. But I still believe George has a lot of work to do. He needs to push himself, needs to make himself better, and he needs to push the limit of that car, because his teammate is doing a better job than he is doing presently. Starting the Q3, Charles Leclerc crashed in turn 4, and that shows there's a huge pressure on Charles Leclerc. He is pushing the car to the limit, finding limits, and the limits are not there, because you can never get the limit. You keep pushing, you can only get an out of body experience that gives you an experience that is different. On a normal track like this, there are no limits. Every driver looks for their points, for places on the track in which they can maximize their package and get the best out of it. He keeps pushing the limit, and turn 4 was out. The red flag, Max Verstappen and Piastri were able to set the time. Drivers that were on pace were unable, flushed off their tires, and they were unable to set good times. They had to go back in the pit and coming back again to make a better understanding. So I think it's going to be a very interesting one, as George is on a mission. Kimi Antonelli will never back down. Setting out, we saw George Russell, Hamilton, Antonelli giving it all and setting some good powerful pace to give the qualifying the light it needed, and it was a George Russell pole position, Hamilton second on the front row, Antonelli, Norris on the second row, Verstappen, Aja, the 2 Red Bulls. Aja has been light up in the qualifying recently, and I think that is the kind of teammate the Red Bull are looking for real, for Max Verstappen. Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg and Charles Leclerc will be starting 10th on the grid. But how will the race pan out? If you look at the way Barcelona is recently, it's so hot. I'm not sure the soft tires will last 10 laps. So there might be 3 stops tomorrow, probably. The hard tires are not like a good race tire for the race, because we saw Max Verstappen use their tires and he struggled on it. But hard tires will be used tomorrow. So it might be a medium hard, a hard medium hard, or a medium hard probably. And you can see some teams are setting up a soft tire maybe to do some 10 laps on low fuel burn. So it's going to be strategy. And starting tomorrow is one of the longest pit straight, and I think there'll be so much overtake by turn 1 by drivers on the slipstream. There'll also be opportunities to see how far the clutch change system and the small turbo in Ferrari will work better tomorrow. Let's see how that would work, but it's going to be an interesting one, and it's going to be an interesting opportunity to see what Lewis Hamilton can do in the new upgraded Ferrari, the way they can maintain their pace and stay in line and in track for races. So it's going to be very interesting seeing how all those things are panned out and how it's done tomorrow. But a beautiful race we are going to see. You don't want to miss that tomorrow and the analysis of the race. Up until tomorrow, I love you guys. Bye. Cheers.